going on, everybody? Welcome back to another uniform video on the channel. Today I'm going to be going over every single NFL team's worst uniform of all time. The last video I made in this series, I went over every team's best uniform of all time, and there are some things that I screwed up on in that video, and I just want to acknowledge that. First, I said that the Broncos navy uniforms that they had released in the 90s and had up until this season or last season were a product of Reebok. They were not, so I was slamming Reebok for no reason, and I sounded very confidently wrong. While I can acknowledge that Reebok has made some terrible uniforms, these were not one of them. So Reebok, my bad, and anybody that, was listening to that and was like, this dude's wrong, I was wrong. But, that might not be a big deal to some people. To me, it is. I'm a perfectionist. I try to do as much research as I can. And, maybe I just got a little lazy, or I assumed something was right and it was not. So, thank you to everybody who commented that and was correcting me. I appreciate it. I'm trying to do the best that I can to make these videos completely accurate and the best that they could possibly be. But I would still recommend checking out that video if you're a big uniform guy like me. But that's enough of that. Let's move into the next video on the series. Every NFL team's worst uniform of all time. So starting with the Arizona Cardinals, I have the 2017 to 2021 all-black uniforms. This Nike uniform adopts the base design that Reebok debuted ahead of the 2005 season and a similar black jersey to the one debuted in 2010. This time around, they have all black jerseys and pants, which basically flip the red and white color blocking from the first set of black jerseys. Right off the bat, I don't like the Reebok style, which will be a common theme as it was last video. On top of it all, I have one large bone to pick with these uniforms, and it's the fact that the Cardinals slapped their white helmet on top of these things, which doesn't really match anything else that's going on. It's not really the Cardinals' fault because of the one helmet rule. It still was in place, but unfortunately for Arizona, this still was their worst look, excluding the sweater days, because we're not going to count those except for a few instances that you will see later on in the video. Next up are the Atlanta Falcons and their 2020 to 2022 gradient uniforms. During their uniform revamp in 2020, Atlanta took a risk and dropped their gradient alternate uniforms in an attempt to capture the embodiment of Rise Up, and they made a dog shit uniform. It was the first gradient uniform to ever be in the league, and it immediately showed why there should never be a gradient one in the league ever again. So Reebok just made it out of the crosshairs with this one, but I'll tell you right now, they're still not safe. But this gradient look from Atlanta takes the cake for their worst uniform ever. Then we have the Baltimore Ravens and their gold pants from 2015. In 2015, the Ravens wanted to include more of that gold color into their uniforms, and that's fine, but the way that they went about it was not the greatest strategy. It kind of looks like somebody took a shit and threw it in a washing machine with their white pants, and it's not a good look. The Ravens don't have a ton of uniforms that really stand out from each other, except for this one, and it's for the wrong reasons. So gold pants, probably never going to make a return, and I'm all right with that. Then we have the Buffalo Bills and their 2002 to 2010 away uniforms. Welcome back, Reebok. After debuting in the 2002 season, the Bills would wear their worst uniforms in franchise history for another 8 years. They moved to a color scheme that would see the introduction of navy blue. They slapped a weird stripe on their previously beautiful red helmets, and they added a big block of navy on the shoulders. They did all of this while still maintaining the previous color scheme of the lighter shade of blue, kind of like the royal blue with the red and the white. Then you add the navy into it, and it really just doesn't mix well. Then we have the Carolina Panthers 2018 to 2021 blue on black alternates. Let me start by saying I don't think that the Panthers really have any bad uniform combinations. They've had the same base design since they came into the league, and while I do think that their shoulder stripes need a little bit of work, the uniforms really aren't bad themselves. Since we do have to pick a worst one, though, I basically have to pick a combo that I think looks the least good. And so I went with these blue on black combos, mostly due to the lack of silver. The silver is almost exclusive to the helmet, while everything else is just blue or black. So yes, I'm putting this as their worst uniforms, but they're really not bad. Then to the Chicago Bears and their 75th anniversary uniforms from 1994. These are bad. This is one of those scenarios that I was alluding to earlier when I said some sweater uniforms will be excluded and some will be included, only because they put that sweater design onto the shell-styled uniforms. The gold or tan pants that you typically see in these throwbacks, kind of yucky. The stripes have no place on a uniform these days, let alone the 90s. I wasn't alive in the 90s, but even I know better than that. It's cool to debut a throwback for the league's 75th anniversary, but they've been in the league since it began. Maybe just slap a patch on there and call it a day. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals and their 1968 to 1980 uniforms. I didn't pick between a home or away for this one because my criticism for these uniforms stands with both sets. When the Bengals became an AFL franchise 2 years before the merger, Paul Brown chose the exact same shade of brown that their rivals in Cleveland would use. He was kind of trying to stick it to them. Same shade of orange. I think I said brown just now. And almost identical uniforms except for the Bengals word mark across the side of the helmet. And it's not to say that these uniforms are really bad, but seeing what they would roll out in the future, the identity of the Bengal wasn't shown quite how it was from the rest of the 80s to now. So I'm going to have to choose these just because everything else that came out after was better. Then we have the Cleveland Browns and their 2015 to 2019 home alternates. So when Nike revamped the Browns uniforms in 2015, they decided to go with like a super bold look. Big word mark across the chest, orange stitching on the brown jerseys, and a shadow on the number. It looks like Nike was doing a little bit too much when they did Cleveland's uniforms. All of their uniforms during this time all dealt with the same problems, except for that stitching that I mentioned on those brown jerseys. The brown jerseys were really the only ones to do that, and adding it on top of their worst combo, brown on white, home alternates. It's good that they decided on a look that they had in the past because it looks way cleaner, it's not messy, and it's not overdone. But these were... They should not ever go back to them and just stick with what works. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys and their home uniforms. This one might be a little controversial because this is another team that doesn't really have a bad uniform. So what if I could find one to be super picky on? And it would be the home uniforms. Why? Because of the seafoam green pants. And I know a lot of people like that. They love I think it's called Star Blue. Yes, it's an iconic look with a cool history. If I could pronounce this name right, Tex Schramm? Pretty sure it's Schramm. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but he saw a car interior that had the same color as that seafoam green, and he made the decision to put that same color on the pants to really make it pop a little bit more. There's some articles that say that the shade used to look a little bit different back in the day, and when Nike took it over, it showed up more like the green color. Either way, my biggest gripe with this is that the pants don't match the helmet. If it was just silver, it would be fine with me, but that's the only thing I can complain about. The story's pretty cool, but I really had to get nitpicky on this one, so I had to choose their home uniforms. Then we have the Denver Broncos and their 50th anniversary throwbacks from 2009. The Broncos are a team that I have shat all over for having bad uniforms, not named the Orange Crush. I talked about their Navy sets that debuted in 1997 and stuck around until last year. Again, made by Nike, not Reebok. My bad. And though I don't like a lot of their uniforms, none are worse than the abominations that Denver rolled out for the 2009 season, their 50th anniversary. Yellow and brown. Vertically striped socks. Pulled all the way up, of course. And another sweater-style uniform that should not have seen the light of day on a shell-style uniform. Keep them in the closet. Maybe burn them. Never debut them again. Just stick with the Orange Crush uniforms if you're ever going to do a throwback. Then we have the Detroit Lions and their 90th anniversary uniforms from 2023. For Detroit's 90th anniversary as a franchise, the Lions brought out a first time ever blue helmet, and it had their throwback logo on it. That's fine, and I actually really like the helmets, but there is just one problem. The rest of the uniform is gray. And as you know, if the helmet doesn't match, the rest of the uniform, if they are going to go with a monochromatic look, odds are I'm not going to like it. And that was the case here. Just throw some more blue in there, maybe throw on some blue pants, and it would have been all right. But I didn't like them. Gray from shoulder to toe, and then a helmet, a really good looking helmet that was just not all tied in together very well. These are their worst uniforms. Then I have the Green Bay Packers 2013 to 2020 throwback uniforms. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse than putting the sweater designs onto modern gear, the Packers found a way to make it worse. They've been wearing these throwbacks, 1940 throwbacks, consistently up until the Packers went in a different direction recently when it came to honoring the past. But in 2013 to 2020 specifically, the Packers had a different look to it. Normally they'd be wearing the brown helmets because of the leather hats that they wore back in the day. But not only could they not do that because of the one helmet rule, they can only pair it with their yellow lids, but they had a green face mask where there was no green on the rest of the uniform. It's those navy and yellow ones. The yellow hat is fine, but the green face mask just threw it all off. And that is nitpicky for sure. It's just another unfortunate case of the one helmet rule, and the rest of the Packers uniforms are pretty iconic. It just brought down the rest of the uniform, and I had to choose those. Then we have the Houston Texans 2007 Battle Red uniforms. The Texans are the youngest franchise in the NFL, with their inaugural season being in 2002. Shout out. So since they're so young, they've essentially had no uniform changes up until the 2024 offseason. The only thing that's really changed is mixing and matching and the addition of Battle Red on the uniforms. I don't dislike the Battle Red, but the 2007 ones in specific used a different jersey material, and it looked a lot more shiny. And as were a lot of uniforms during that time, if not all the other ones, but the way that it was shiny just kind of made the uniforms look cheap, and I didn't like it. They look better now with the material that they used from Nike, but this time around, not a fan. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts and the Indiana Knights alternates. I don't like them. I don't like these uniforms. I made a short when they first came out in 2023, and I had some angry Colts fans in the comments. Oh, you don't understand the Indiana Knights. You just don't understand. Shut up. I'm sure the Knights in Indiana are fine. They are swell. But these uniforms are not. The black helmet's cool. But the heather texture on the jersey and pants looks tacky. The only other black included on the uniform is on the sleeves, the collar, and around the numbers. So if they had included more black to match up with that helmet, I would have liked them a little bit more. Sorry, Colts fans. Really? But these are still ass a year later. Then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars and their 2015 to 2016 Color Rush uniforms. In 2013, the Jags got some very busy uniforms from Nike. The sharp number font really wasn't that bad, but the weird stripes on the shoulders did kind of do too much. Too much going up on top, especially if you include the terrible, god-awful gradient helmets to represent the speed of a Jaguar. And when you thought it couldn't get any worse than that, that is a high bar to clear when you're talking about a lack of quality. Baby shit gold. These were so bad. And when the Color Rush uniforms came out, I was so excited for them. I look all across. I'm like, these are badass. But then I looked at some skid mark that was across my screen, and I couldn't wonder why a team would ever choose to use that color all the way across their uniform.
Smells like pee-pee and poo-poo in here.
It's gotta be Tony.
Then we have the Kansas City Chiefs, their Dallas Texans away uniforms. Before they were the Chiefs, they were an AFL original, and they were named the Dallas Texans. They were the Texans from 1960 to 1963, and they had some expectedly boring designs. It was the 60s. But in these designs, they had long sleeves with no striping on them at all. And then they had the Texas decal on the helmet. It's just weird to see them as the Texans. I like their red ones better than their white ones. So the aways are going to have to take the fall here. Then we have the Las Vegas Raiders 1962 Oakland Raiders home uniforms. Similar to the Chiefs, the Raiders were an AFL original, and they also had some different uniforms. Instead of the silver and black that we all know and love, they were black and gold. And that's not very Raiders of them. But in 1962 specifically, they ditched the white numbers with gold outlines for some solid gold numbers, and a gold that doesn't pop much off of a black jersey as it would with white numbers. And another reason is the Raiders are silver and black. And since these home uniforms have more gold than the aways, they're the furthest look from their iconic colorway. I'm glad that they moved to silver and black, because black and gold, that's a Saints thing. That's a Steelers thing. Doesn't belong on the Raiders. 1962 home uniforms, they are the worst. Los Angeles Chargers, they're navy alternates. So when the Chargers revamped their uniforms in 2020, they brought along their all navy alternates. They have the same base design with both navy jerseys and pants. But along with this, they have a white helmet with a navy bolt decal. It's not terrible, but again, why don't you just use navy for this helmet? The helmet rule is no longer in place. You can debut a navy helmet, put it on those uniforms, and they will look really good. But they haven't done that yet, so these are the worst. They are one step away from being good uniforms. Moving to the Los Angeles Rams, their 2017 away alternates. When the Rams moved back to LA in 2016, they still had a few years until they would move back to their yellow and blue colorway. However, it began a bit of a transitional era in regards to their uniforms. And what I mean by that is the incorporation of more white. This is included in the white ram horn decal, last seen in 1972. And they paired it with the all-white uniforms, which didn't really look too bad. You know, there was a little bit of gold accenting that looked weird. But when they paired it with the all navy alternates, it fell out of place. All this gold on the uniform and minimal amounts of white throughout it, aside from the number outlines, it was honestly just kind of confusing to why they would do that. These alternates were only worn during the 2017 season, and good riddance because they were weird, and they have much better uniforms currently. Then we have the Miami Dolphins and their orange color rush uniforms. So the color rush project was a hit for some teams and a miss for a few. In this case, the Dolphins were a miss. They had this highlighter orange uniform, this highlighter orange shade, that were kind of an eyesore and not a uniform that you would really see or imagine when you're thinking of the Dolphins or a Dolphin. Their second attempt at some orange uniforms were actually worse than their previous try. I don't want to have to mention it again, but white helmet, the rest is orange. Helmet rule was in place at that time. But actually, if the helmet was orange, probably would have made it worse. Then we have the Minnesota Vikings and their 2006 to 2012 away uniforms. In 2006, the Vikings made a change to their traditional styled uniforms to the trademarked Reebok look. Busy striping and side paneling on the jerseys with an interesting stripe on the pants. Similar case to the Cardinals, just a little too busy and not as good as the uniforms that came before or after. Also, I like the color purple, so the less purple there is, the less I like the uniforms, so I'm going to have to go with the white ones. Then we have the New England Patriots and their current away uniforms. Oddly enough, I really don't like these uniforms. I say that because I think their home uniforms look really good and there's something kind of off with these. But when it comes to those white jerseys, I can't stand those shoulder stripes. Something about the color blocking just looks kind of weird to me. I bet you probably thought I would go with their 2000s uniforms, and they're not made by Reebok like I thought. They were made by Adidas. But maybe they won so much in those uniforms that I really didn't care. So I'm going with their losing era current away uniforms. Then we have the New Orleans Saints and their black helmet alternates. For as hard as it was for me to pick a favorite, it was also that difficult for me to pick a least favorite. I did hate these uniforms right off the get-go, though. I was excited to hear that the team was introducing some black helmets in 2022, and I was so let down to see that not only the helmet design itself was bad, but the combo. Yeah, let's make a helmet for a black and gold team and slap it on to an all-white combo. It's okay, though. We can just wear black socks and it'll even it out. But no, they're terrible, and I had a hard time picking between this one and the all-gold alternates. But there's some continuity with the gold alternates, so I would not bat an eye if they got rid of these and even replace them with those all golds. Then we have the New York Giants and their Century Red throwbacks. In the current 2024 offseason, the Giants revealed a uniform to honor a team that is playing in its 100th season. This is another situation similar to the Bears and the Broncos. Some uniforms just need to stay in the past. These atrocities were topped off by a helmet popularized
Today, Junior!
Popularized by Princeton and Michigan, that kind of wing with the lines going down the back. That's the best part of the uniform, and it only gets worse from there. The jerseys don't really look like football jerseys, American football that is, and the goldish tan pants are a staple of these throwback styles. I don't like them. They just don't work for me. And I made a video when these first came out where I dive a little deeper into them, and I suggest that you check it out, but I hate them. I don't like them at all. Then we have the New York Jets and their 2019 to 2021 jet black alternates. When the Jets changed up their uniforms in 2019, they made some interesting choices, to say the least. I was not a fan of any of the uniforms in this lineup, but most of them had some continuity when it came to the color schemes. But when it came to the black ones, they had the same base design, except it was black and green. It would look better when they added the black helmet in 2022, but when it was just the green helmet on there for the previous 3 seasons, wasn't a great look. Didn't really like these. I think their new ones are better. Glad that they made an upgrade. For the Philadelphia Eagles, the 1930s throwbacks from 2007. In 2007, the Eagles debuted a one-off throwback with their jerseys from the days of the sweaters and leather helmets. They kept the wing design on the helmet, and they didn't bring back the old tan pants. So good for them, but they're still bad. I used to pick these uniforms in Madden because of how comically bad they were, and it's such a weird jump from the midnight green to these. It was always funny to see, and it's weird seeing the Eagles bring out blue and yellow. Pittsburgh Steelers, 75th anniversary uniforms from 1994. 1994 and their anniversary uniforms were a lot of misses. This is another installment from that season, and that came before the Bumblebee uniforms that you may have thought I was going to pick, but on these uniforms had vertical stripes and a V coming down from the shoulders that met in the middle of the jersey, probably like right around here, a city crest in the middle of the jersey. Well, where would the numbers go? They were on the upper chest. They were ugly. They were weird. They just seemed so out of place. And the pants. Do I need to mention the pants? Probably not. The fact that these are being picked over the Bumblebees says enough about how bad these uniforms really are. San Francisco 49ers, the 2015 to 2017 black alternates. In 2015, as part of the Color Rush project, the 49ers got an all-black alternate. Usually that's a good thing, right? Not so much this time. The 49ers aren't a team that needed a black alternate. Iconic red and gold color scheme, but they went with an all-black approach, and it was just a miss. Gold helmet on the top just didn't fit well. Wasn't a fan of these at all. One of the rare occasions where I don't like an all-black uniform at all. For the Seattle Seahawks, their 2009 action green alternates. In 2009, the Seahawks debuted a one-off lime green alternate jersey, and I can see why it never came back. This was a pre-Nike revamp, so they already had some lackluster uniforms. But this attempt to bring life to a boring set of uniforms was a swing and a miss. It looked super out of place. I really thought that I was going to choose their Color Rush uniforms that are highlighter green. But I did forget about these hidden not-so gems. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their 2016 to 2019 Color Rush uniforms. A year after they debuted their original Color Rush uniforms, the Bucs rolled out an almost identical look, except with a little bit less design. They took the upper chest stripes, and now the jerseys look almost empty, aside from those alarm clock numbers. Those stripes kind of, what I can attach it to was a resemblance to a sword, like, a Buccaneer sword or something. I don't know. But on top of that, the helmets and the big-ass decal. Overall, this was just the most boring set of uniforms during the alarm clock era. And I thought these were sick when I was younger, but they've been aging pretty poorly the more that I look at them. The Tennessee Titans, their 2009 Houston Oilers away throwbacks. In 2009, the Titans had an AFL 50th anniversary season and uniform, and I didn't like it. This throwback was a nod to their jerseys from their inaugural season. They had a blue helmet and some pretty simplistic jerseys. This is the lesser of the Oiler uniforms that we've seen, just because I'm really not digging the blue lids. And the reason I picked the aways in specific is because it makes the helmets stick out more, and they lost by 59 points when they were wearing them. Then we have, lastly, the Washington Commanders and their 2013 to 2015 throwbacks. When the Commanders were the Redskins, they would consistently bring back their throwbacks from the 1937 season, the year that they moved to Washington. When they wore them before the one helmet rule, it would be the brown leather styled helmets and shell. But when that rule did come into place, the one helmet rule, they just used their regular helmet, which included the bright yellow face mask. And it didn't match anything in the rest of the uniform. Pants. They would still try to make up for it in later seasons with gray face masks and not having the yellow pop out from the rest of the uniform. But it was just a lost cause. But since the yellow face masks were there in that time frame of 2013 to 2015, we're going to spare the uniforms from 2016 to 2019 that had the gray face masks. So those are my picks for every NFL team's worst uniform of all time. If you missed my best uniforms video of all time, I recommend going to check it out. I don't shit on teams as much. Just try not to remind me how I fucked up a couple times on that one. I'm kind of a uniform merchant now. I like making uniform videos, so expect more of them. I've kind of got bored of making, during or mid-season talk, weekly predictions. It's just not as fun. And I think you guys can agree with that because the views really, and engagement speak for themselves. Every time there's a new release, I'm going to talk about it. I might even break into college football uniforms because there's a ton to like there. And I just want to make videos that I enjoy and that you guys enjoy and have more fun with this because I don't want this to become a chore because that would suck. But that's all I got for you guys today. So until the next video, I will see you guys later.